now that you've kind of been told, you'll go, oh, that looks like it's transparent. Oh, that's not transparent. You can actually see where things are obviously transparent. So all this hair was done just a transparent orange over an ugly greeny gray, and then I just brushed in the light strokes of the white in more opaque color to get hair. This ribbon was glazed in red over top of that brownish underpainting. So you can take these transparent colors. So I'm just adding a little more of that orangey yellow. And I just have enough oil added, just like a touch, to make it oily. I don't want it like this. That's not a stable paint film, that's a weak paint film. That's like building a brick wall with not many bricks and lots of mortar. So you always got to think of having bricks and mortar kind of even. So it's kind of particles. So if I want to change the color of something, like if this is too gray, this is how Ingres would have painted. He would have had a gray underpainting, and then he'd go in and he'd just warm up areas. That transparent color sits on there, and then you can just kind of rub it in, and you start to warm up the flesh. So you can bring something that looks a little dead to life. I use this panel all the time for demos, so it's probably had 20 layers already. I think it might even have a varnish on it. But it's nice to, this is the gray of the underpainting. You can see the chin is the gray of the underpainting. So this is I'll just put an orange film on this. One painting that I did, I had tons of trees and leaves and forest and brown like texture on bark and stuff, and the whole painting was done in just black to white, all gray tones. And then at the end I just went in like half a day and just glazed warmer green, transparent greens. The trunks I just glazed with basically an orange that I just dirtied up with a touch of blue. So you can control all your colors with just by, if something's too orange, you can green it out. If something's not red enough, you can put a warm red on it. If you want your eyes a little warmer, you can hazel them out with this orange. You can deepen shadows. I'm just sticking to my transparent colors. You can get almost a black. So now I have all three colors mixed. So this is a deep brownish purple. If you want to deepen hair, you got the wrong color, but you got the right sort of look to it. You can just go in and glaze. It doesn't take, like a lot of times people are trying to mix every color hair, but if the tones are figured out in the underpainting, then the glaze just goes on top. You can take your watercolor brush and soften the brush strokes. And so now I've got a nice rich brownish hair instead of a greeny hair. Right? I'll just show you again here just change the color. And if you screw up and go over the edge with this, you just take your brush. I keep all my dead old brushes. I got a couple hundred brushes at the studio. If I went over the edge, I could just push the paint, clean up that edge. And then it's here too on the ear. If you look at an Ingres painting, Angla, you'll actually see like a little thin halo of color between two edges where he's actually pushed the paint back. I always paint right side up, upside down. Because I'm right-handed, I have to. So there I just went on the white top. Clean that up. So that green grape, if I had my Indian yellow, I could do Indian yellow. I'll just do this. So this is just transparent. Then you can go into the transparency and paint opaque. So I'll do that in a second. So this is a limey, weird green. Just Indian yellow and blue, and you could go over top of a gray grape just with a stain, and you got it's not blue enough, you can add a little more blue. If I go on here, you'll see the same green looks totally different on that color than that color, but you get the depth of the color. Then you can go in with, can you see this okay? Yeah. So I'm always on my second layer, just adding a little bit of oil to my paint. So you can go into something like this and then just put in a little reflected light, a little highlight. Take another clean brush. But sometimes if you're having a really good painting day, you're like, yay, and then you look over and you got 30 brushes to clean. You're like, ooh. So this is just a wet fill, you can soften. The girl with the pearl earring, if you look at the Vermeer paintings, you'll actually see the reds are glazed. You'll see it's like rich ultramarine blues are glazed. You can see the transparency of the color. You can look at hair, see how things are glazed. So that was a little bit more opaque into that. I could paint quite opaque into it. Say I want to like really line something up. If something's the wrong color, you just say, is it too blue? Put a bit of orange. Won't put too much orange, maybe it went a little too one way. You just keep tweaking your colors around. So that's more opaque color now. And a lot of people always think they have to keep over painting, like put more paint on top to cover what they've done. With oil paint, you paint really thin. You're not actually covering and covering and covering. If you have good body film in the underlayer, then the top layer is just really thin films. Once you start getting into opaque, fine detail. There was a painting at that old master show downtown, the one that just finished, and the hair was all these little kind of ringlets. So it was done in, all painted into a wet glaze. There was probably just a flat round painted underneath, then maybe a bit of detail, and then it was let to dry, glazed with the transparent color, and then little highlights were painted into that. So I just take a fine brush, and I'm getting my paint to be creamy, not watery, just creamy, and then you can actually paint detail stuff into that. And I actually have, like, this is a pretty narrow brush, it's a number 2. There's 000 brushes, so you're just painting with a couple of hairs, and that's when you can get the nice little ringlets and stuff like that. You can always push the paint around and soften things. If you go too fat, you can narrow out the line. And when I'm finished this demo, nobody's allowed to come closer than here, okay? So that's painting into a wet glaze. All sorts of stuff. I use wet glazes for detailing. And I always save my highlights for just the end of something. So that I just covered with a little bit of a wet film. The paint just sort of flows into the paint, so it comes off really easily. If you have an area and you don't like the color of it, you can actually oil in your area with just oil on a brush. And say I want to do something under the nose here, there's no detail, I can oil in the whole area just with oil. And then I wipe it off. Is this, everybody enjoying this? So that's now, it's just a slightest slippery surface. So this is what I would do if I was doing some really fine detail work. And then go in with a film color, use a big brush. If people paint flesh, like, ooh, it's too orange. Just tweak it. It takes just a touch of color to take something that's too orange. Just take a touch of blue, and you can just deaden the color of it. So you go from a bright color to a more fleshy color right off the bat. They used to sell flesh tones, light, middle, and dark. Just mix an orange, add white if you need light, less white if you need medium, and then don't add white if you need a dark. And then just to kill the orange quality, a touch of a complementary color or a different color will make that a flesh tone. So here I'm just kind of dragging the color on top. It's called a half paste or a veil of color. It's a bit too yellow, so I'll just grab a little blue, roll it out a bit. And you can get these softer tones. If that makes any sense. Looks a bit like paint. That's why I go through lots of brushes. You actually just rub this in and sort of blend that into the wet film that I rubbed on. So I just make a slight change. Rub this in. So you can just adjust the color, tweak it, soften it a bit. So that's kind of transparency. This still looks a little yellow. I could probably put a little bit more in there. into that wet film, it's really nice to do stuff. In the lips, I sometimes do it a gray underpainting, just glaze it with a red, and then take a little bit of white and start pulling up some lights. Bouncing light. You can paint the transparent color to that. You can paint opaque color to that. Put a little more light in the bottom of the lips. Just start making a little more natural looking. Any questions? One yawn in the back. That's one yawn. We got 2 more yawns to go. No.
And so what's the rationale behind a little more oil for each layer?
In general.
Yeah.
So I'm using half oil, half mineral spirits. So my second layer, I only do 2 layers, so I don't have to get too worried about it. If you're doing quite a few layers, you can do the first layer or 2 with mineral spirits, second layer with maybe 33%, like 1/3 oil or half oil. You can do a layer or 2 in that, and then you can add maybe like 2/3 oil for the next layer after that, and then you can actually use straight oil and add it to your paint. There comes a point when your surface is so saturated though that it's just like painted on a slippery film. So
But that's why
most
I'm
artists,
wondering, why do you up the oil content?
oh, so the reason you add oil to your, instead of just using mineral spirits, is because every layer you paint, so if I paint the first layer like this, the next layer I paint will suck a little bit of the oil. Oil dries like a sponge, it kind of opens up. So this will actually suck a little bit of oil from the next layer into it, which makes the top layer a little less oily.
Right.
So you want to add a little oil to kind of compensate,
Right.
and then the 2 films will have roughly the same structure. Maybe the top film will have a little more oil,
Okay.
and then you won't get cracking or flaking or peeling or,
I see.
yeah. So you just want a little bit more oil in each layer. So they call it fat over lean.
They call it what?
Fat over lean. Like more,
I see. Right.
more
right.
buttery over less
Yeah.
buttery.
Okay. Thank you. I was trying to figure it out. Okay.
So anyway, that's basically how I paint subtle stuff. If I'm doing a subtle painting, and I've been trying to do a lot of like brush strokes and stuff lately, so I'm not as blendy as I used to be. I used to be really blendy, and I was obsessed with it, and I'm trying to like hold back, hold back, hold back. So yeah, if something's too orange, so I'm gonna, the opposite of orange is blue. I'm gonna take a greeny blue, put a touch of white. And it's going to be a veil of color. It's not going to be a solid color. So if it's just a little too orange, I can just put a touch of maybe green or blue, kill the warmth in there. Just dragging the brush over. I'm not like solidly covering the entire thing like this. I'm actually just putting a little sort of dusting into that white film. And then I let the green and that orange kind of mix together to give you back a little bit of that neutral. Here it's a little too green, so it's great technique for obsessive compulsive people. Anybody here have that tendency? Just kind of pull this up. And that Bob Ross way of painting and then slapping your brush and getting the shit all over it, breathing it. Don't do that. He died pretty young. Yeah, that's kind of what I do. If you do something and you just want a deep, deep shadow, it's nice to go with like a transparent, deep color. So I just mix the yellow, red, and blue together. I got a really good deep black. So if you want to like darken something, if I put a transparent black on that, you can still see a little light through, but when you put a transparent black on this just darkens. So you get a really rich, deep black. And the old masters did these walls that had these like large walls that had underpainted from light to dark in a gray, and then they glaze like from a cool color. Let's try it over here. So if you glaze the color over top, go from that. That's like a Van Dyke brown over top of that underpainting. And then you can change the color of the background, just a little more orange. Oil's nice because it can blend easily. So I can add this here, make this a little larger. And just blend the two together. So you can go from a dark purple to a more orangey color. It's always good to have a project that you're working on that then you figure it out. This is just like a random sample work. There's white on that brush. As soon as you get a touch of white in there, it kills everything. You can use a blending brush. You can use a dead acrylic painting brush that's used to be pointy, that's all fanned out now and worn out. And you can just blend the colors in. Get rid of the brush strokes. So if you're painting a horse, it's nice. You can actually pull paint off too, so you can get texture. You can actually scratch into it. All sorts of stuff. The more texture you have underneath, the cooler it is too, because if you put that same transparent color, use a big brush for that. I'm gonna need help. I don't need help bringing stuff to the car. I need you to help me wash my hands. On textured stuff like this, you can just drag across the top. You get nice variation, or you can push the color into the pores. I was just watching a video last night of this lady that paints the most amazing wood textures, and she does all the texture of the wood just with white, and then wipes off the top surface so you get a high points and low points. So that's just put on the top, or right in the grooves, and then wiping the top. The paint stays in the darks, and then you get a really neat kind of texture on that in there. So oil paint's pretty flexible. Different whites do different things. Titanium white's really good covering white, and it's good for smoothing paint. If you want a really good texture, you can use Kremnitz white, lead white, flake white replacement. They're more cakey, so you get nice drag. Some people love dragging paint. I think Van Gogh used a lot of lead white in his paints.
So for that area, you put on the white very thickly and then let it dry?
Yeah.
So that you
let
can
it
do
dry,
the...
yeah. So there's a guy in my studio, I had a halo on his head, and I wanted the light to kind of, the light of the room catches the top of his head and the top of the halo because of the texture. So it just looks that much brighter than it would if it was just a flat white, and his skin kind of has a sparkly glow just because of the texture. Okay.
So now can you do that with any color, or is it just the white
You
in
can add
particular?
color to the white and give it textured. Yeah, you can add a little.
Like any color you use
transparent
would...
colors to the texturing white. Yeah, you can adjust it.
But white is the basis of like a medium and acrylic.
You guys know Paul Chiswick?
Yes.
He does these big wave paintings and stuff. Sometimes his underpainting is almost all white. You barely see what you're looking at, but he's got the texture happening in the underpainting, and then he starts staining in color over top of it. So he uses the texture. Sometimes he grays out the whites a bit or browns out the whites a bit, but he's basically glazing on top of tons of texture, and he gets really nice, deep, dark, moody waves and rocks. So it's all to do with the texture of his surface.
So if you were wanting to put texture into the painting like this one on the table where it's all
Yeah.
drawn out, you do that at that point?
At this stage, yeah.
And
I do
then-
texture and color. I always try and get close to the color, so I'm not practicing when I preach always. This is a technique that you can use with oil that's not unfun. And then the other thing you can do is you can scumble opaque color right across the top surface and get these kind of neat. That's like purpley underneath, yellow sitting on top, texture, dark, light. You get really cool stuff happening. Lights. That's how that lady that I was looking at yesterday was painting wood. Just got this one canvas, and then I think I'll call it a day. So when I paint an oil painting, if I'm doing something like this, which I don't do, but you do, with a transparent green, you can actually go in and deepen and enriching your green. Leave spots for the sky. So I'm just on top of a flat green. if I had my other yellows, I can add a little bit of oil. Just thin it so there's almost nothing on the brush. I can just wet the surface. You could go right over the top of the trees. Right away with the yellow, the brown's a lot richer than that brown. So from a flat, I can go from a flat. This will take about a minute. Do the whole thing. I'm going to take a transparent brown. Brown is just a dirty orange. Start to give these things texture, great depth. Go off the tree. The brown, I can go off the tree and give that a richness. To that wet film, I always like to go in with lighter colors. So now I'm going into opaque. I'm going to try and make this thing start to come alive. So I'm going to drag some spots of light. So because I have a nice dark base, this just sits on top and you get a depth. So this is light passing through the trees. A lot of times when you try and do the light and the dark at the same time, you get these muddy mixtures. So just painting into a wet film and keeping my yellows or my orangey colors still orange. It's not going to mix with the brown underneath, so you still have a richness. When you get muddy colors, it's because you're mixing darker, lighter, back and forth. So here, these are just going to sit on top of the surface.
Is it possible to stand a little to the side?
Yes.
Thank you.
And then I'll do the same thing with my greens. And then I'll put a little bit of sky in there to have light coming through. And the paint's not going to, now my green's not going to mix with my blue sky, and you're going to have nice definition. The lady in my studio was doing this. She wanted a little bit bushy on the bottom, so she just took a fan brush and sort of softened things. You can fuzz things out by adding a touch of white. So if you want a little bit of an atmosphere, I can add maybe a smoky gray. Just put a little bit of a smoky gray in here. There's some forest fog. A little bit of fog up here. So you're still seeing the painting underneath, but you're getting something that looks really flat, and all of a sudden you're starting to get depth. So I'll just make a couple light greens. If it's too green, just add a touch. Like a lot of too greens are really green or vibrant. Phthalo green, people use it the first time they're painting. It's like, oh, it's really strong. You just have to learn how to tweak it by just adding a touch of the complementary. You can add a brown, which kind of warms it up, or you can add just a touch of red. So if that green's too bright, you can just add a touch of red, and it makes it an earthy green or a sap green. And so I don't need to go buy another tube of paint that's the right green. I can, with my primaries, make any green just by making the brightest green and then toning it down. So there's from lime green to